Let us pray. Almighty God, we have called us to govern this province. We ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat U gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat U ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan U op te dra. Sikelele ilesweletu nabantu balu, umusile ukulungu kwepondi letu, kosi sikelele I Afrika, Kina abantwana bayo, kokele in kokele zayo, inike ikolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. Order. I see the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. That notwithstanding Rule 161, the House considers the principle and finalisation of the Western Cape Additional Adjustments Appropriation Bill on Thursday, 22nd of March.
No objections. Agreed to. Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. That notwithstanding the provision of Rule 18, the hours of sitting on Tuesday, the 27th of March, 2018 and Wednesday, the 28th of March 2018 shall be 10 o'clock till adjournment.
No objection. Motion is agreed to. I then ask the Secretary to read the first order.
Consideration of the principle of the Western Cape Adjustments, Additional Adjustments Appropriation Bill 2017-2018 financial year B2 2018.
I see the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker and members of this House. As indicated during the tabling of the Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill on the 6th of March 2018 in this legislature, an additional R100 million has been reallocated from other provinces experiencing slow spending to the Western Cape for the purpose of accelerating the delivery of integrated and sustainable human settlements in the province. Honourable Deputy Speaker, while we are certainly grateful for the funds, it does sadly highlight two things. Firstly, while there may certainly be a myriad of reasons why a provincial department in other provinces are unable to spend the allocated funds, the inability to do so does not inspire confidence in their provinces, in the confidence in their government's ability to work responsibly with public funds. And secondly, allocating additional funding to the Western Cape does signal a vote of confidence in a DA-led administration's ability, even at this late stage of the current financial year, spend government's funds in a responsible and accountable manner. Deputy Speaker, this view is supported by the 2016-17 Public Finance Management Act audit outcomes, which I believe is worth repeating. Within the Western Cape Government, 100% public entities and 85% of departments received clean audit outcomes for the 2016-17 financial year, with the remainder of the departments where the outcomes have been pronounced upon by the AG received unqualified audits. Deputy Speaker, also allow me to reiterate that the R100 million will be allocated as follows. R57 million will be used for bulk infrastructure such as electricity and sewer reticulation in the Forest Village and Bala CBD catalytic projects, while R43 million will be used with the assistance of the Housing Development Agency to purchase land critical for the further development of the Imizamo-Yetu project in Hout Bay. The adjustment budget will provide for the alternative use of drought funding previously set aside in the 2017-18 adjusted estimates primarily for the drought and water augmentation initiatives, which will now be redirected to municipalities in the province to address the current drought disaster. Deputy Speaker, this demonstrates that this government is responsive to the most pressing demands within our areas of jurisdiction. It also provides funding for the safe removal of asbestos in the Eden region. Deputy Speaker, the additional allocation not only confirms the growing confidence in the Western Cape's government's ability to administer public funds efficiently, economically and effectively, but also that the concept of a capable state as envisaged in the National Development Plan is firmly entrenched in the Western Cape. I am therefore confident that the Western Cape government will spend these funds in a responsible and accountable manner. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Davids.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ANC welcomes the additional 100 million rand our revolutionary ANC guide national government has allocated for human settlement in the Western Cape, especially the contribution of 43 million rand in this additional amendment budget for the purchase of land in the Hout Bay area of Imazamuyetu, where people suffered for years with all sorts of ills, including devastating fires and appalling living conditions. The information is vague on where this land is, because according to the committee, the parcels of land is identified, but they cannot say specifically which land is identified. Seemingly, there is still disagreement on which land to decide or negotiate for. The DA is torn apart with factional and power struggles, like the MEC of social development that wants to be the mayor of Cape Town. And one hopes it's not the case here. I therefore ask of the Honourable MEC, Madikizela, to tell us here today and right now which land has been identified. Give us the reference or even earth numbers in order for us to exercise our oversight work to see that the transformation objectives for integration and equality will be adhered to. And also we want to ask the MEC here today, was there any public participation with the community of Hout Bay? The rest of the new housing allocation amounts to 57 million rand for the mysteriously named catalytic priority projects. Despite the fancy name for these projects, it needs more and close scrutiny as well as proper oversight. The two conditional grants projects refer to, in firstly, the well-known BLR CBD that keeps on cropping up in various budgets. It was in the previous budget, main budget is in this main budget, and it's also here. It is clear that this area gets a lot of attention and that developers will make a killing there as the project seeks to unlock even further opportunities and wealth. The grant is for bulk services. Secondly, is that our forest village in the Kuils River area of Easter Rivier, where almost 4,300 so-called housing opportunities will be established. Of this, just over 2,500 will be for subsidized developments. The ANC will keep a close watch on these projects to ensure that the guidelines and policies are adhered to, and will not hesitate to report deviations to the national government. This is necessary as the DA cannot be trusted with such big projects. We have seen the overpayment of about 5 billion rand on the Cape Town Stadium and bus rapid transport to Blouberg. There are also the stream-rolled rezoning of the Founders Gardens and another development around it. Not to speak of the Tafelberg school site housing development for the poor and the working class people in Sea Point, where an official got too involved in the bargaining of the sale of the strip land. That was awarded to the privileged and other questionable activities around it. The DA does not care for the poor and ordinary people of this province. That official was suddenly redeployed to Conradie Hospital site to look after the DA interests there. This week, a newspaper advert went out publicly. It now only recruits a property developer for a pilot or test catalytic priority project for the old Conradie Hospital site of 22 hectares and 6 other unspecified projects. This development must also be closely examined as it is the first step in the dealing with that and other catalytic projects like those in Bella and Forest Village. The DA is obsessed with the Conradie piece of land. It was raving about it from former MEC Robin Kylan's time. but nothing much happened in the almost 10 years on the watch of the Honourable Premier Yalan Zille. A lot was said, but too little was action. One can only hope that in this case of Biala, CBD and Forest Village, more movement and service delivery will be seen. It must also be seen with the implementation of the untested so-called better living model. Social housing or affordable homes for working class people to be closer to their jobs and opportunities remain a priority. This province cannot just prepare and partially develop prime pieces of land that will be used for the privilege or benefit of few. There should be closer control over the allocation of large numbers of so-called open market properties for hire and developers. Some serious money is going to be made by the developers. What is more worrying in this project model of the Conradi matter is that the developer will be appointed even though the rezoning is not yet been done by the Cape Town Metro. It's still pending and on an appeal process. Hopefully the DA by its Boys Club cabal has not already made a deal in the back rooms. Why is a commercial property developer recruited for a social housing development? Such a developer may look after the interests of the big developers and businesses, as these are the ones the DA prefer to milk as party donors. This legislature must ensure that the DA in government stick to best practice, not to wander off the high road again and follow the national guidelines, and they must follow the national guidelines precisely. The ANC welcomes further drought assistance to various municipalities. This is to ensure longer-term water scrutiny. Not the kind of alarmist so-called disaster of all disasters and termed by the Honourable Premier that sounded like a tragedy bigger than Noah's flood. And then there is the matter of the taps running dry or not. While many people already have to stand in the line at communal taps and can only get what they can carry, they have been living with the DA's day zero for many years. And now there's even a confusion in the DA with the day zero. The leader is saying the one thing, and then the leaders in the metro is saying another. The leader, Musi Mamani, said the day zeros moved to next year, and then you hear this morning that the leaders of the deputy mayor in Cape Town is saying there's the day zero is still here. There is also 2 million rand made available for the removal of asbestos by the Eden District Municipality, thanks to the caring ANC central government. We therefore, as the ANC, support the national government by supporting this adjustment. Thanks.
Thank you, Member. Honourable Minister Provincial.
Agbare Deputy Speaker, colleagues, baie dankie collega's vir die geleentheid. Op 15 Februarie 2018 het Cyril Ramaphosa die nuwe president van Suid-Afrika geword. Wat was een van die eerste besluite wat die nuwe president geneem het? Hy het die minister van water en sanitasie en die minister van plaaslike regering vervang. Daar was die afgelope 9 jaar altesaam 6 verskillende ministers vir plaaslike regering. Agbare Deputy Speaker, dit is eenvoudig so dat dit uiters moeilik is om stabiliteit in 'n sektor te verkry en langtermynplanne vas te lê en uit te voer tot voltooiing van soveel gesigte. Agbare Speaker, ten spyte van vele uitdagings is ons provinsie op elke meetbare vlak van dienslewering die bes presteerde in die land. 80% van die departemente en entiteite het skoon audits ontvang. Die tweede beste provinsie was Gauteng, wat net meer as 50% gekry het. Die data gee versekering aan mense dat hul geld gaan wat dit hoort. Dr. Ivan Meyer het in sy jongste begrotingsrede beskryf as die begroting vir die mense. Ons DA-regering glo daarin om waarde aan mense se lewens toe te voeg deur die boublokke van hul toekoms te versterk. Daarom kry onderwys 35% van die totale begroting en ons sien die resultate elke jaar. Ons wil ook vir ons mense sorg wat kwesbaar en siek is en daarom kry gesondheid 37% van die begroting. Daar is ook ander departemente wat baie belangrik is. Een hiervan is plaaslike regering en dit is waar ons tans in die voorste linie baklei teen die voortsleepende droogte. The global population doubles every 70 years. Here in City of Cape Town, the Western Cape, It doubled over the last 20 years. We have seen and managed several droughts before, but never with more than 4 million people in a city. The city is not an island and is on its own, and we want to touch on the need to better capacitate and improve the rural towns. We must seek to provide citizens with more opportunities in their communities to better enable them to make a good living where they are. It is my dream to see more resilient, sustainable and successful towns in this province that grow into regional hubs of employment and opportunities. Towns and cities that are more climate resilient and shock-proof, and places where there can be jobs created. Of course, this is not an easy thing. A major constraint remains financing. Many of our municipalities face severe financial challenges that limit their potential to develop into business hubs and become job creators. In this regard, we need to have a continued look at the current structure of grant payments to municipalities, particularly with regard to bulk reticulation and maintenance requirements. Many municipalities are simply not able to generate enough money from their own sources to pay for many of these types of projects. The tariff municipalities can charge for services rendered is another concern. Municipalities are not setting cost-reflective tariffs, but the reality is that realistic tariffs will not be affordable to communities that are already under pressure in the current economic environment. Municipalities in the Western Cape are serious about addressing their developmental challenges, but addressing poverty and underdevelopment requires significant funding. It also requires good financial management. The little we do get needs to go where it is meant to go, and in this regard, I am proud to state that the DA provincial government keeps a tight handle on financial management. Unlike ANC provinces, not a single town in this province is in the Eskom's bad books at this moment. Towns shows the commitment and responsibility this provincial government and our local entities have towards public finance. Agbare Deputy Speaker, as provinsie vervul ons geen rol in die uitrol van grootmaat waterinfrastruktuur nie. Dit is 'n nasionale regeringsverantwoordelikheid. Ten spyte van die reuse droogte wat ons tans ervaar, is daar bykans geen nuwe werklike projekte aan die gang of in beplanning vir langtermyn watersekerheid vir Wes-Kaap nie. Die grootste projek waaraan reeds meer as 2 miljard rand spandeer is die lig van die Klein Willem Damwal. Maar dit is gestaak en gaan nie langer voort nie. Dit was gebou met die doel om 5000 hektaar vir nuwe boere aan te plant, maar ons praat van grondhervorming, agbare Speaker. Daar is internasionale beste praktyke dat water op provinsie en streeksvlak bestuur moet word, met gepaardgaande begrotings. Ek wil hierdie gesprek met ons nuwe nasionale minister begin. Ons moet meer beheer hê oor ons eie toekoms, ook in die opsig. Agbare Deputy Speaker, as DA provinsie het ons in die nuwe finansiële jaar 157 miljoen rand geprioritiseer vir waterinfrastruktuurprojekte. Ons het as provinsie ook 'n bykomende 100 miljoen vir droogtehulp begroot. Die grootste deel hiervan gaan aan die landbousektor wat in ernstige moeilikheid is. Ons is bekommerd oor ons landbousektor en is verbind daartoe om te doen wat ons kan as provinsie om hulle te ondersteun. Vergelyk gou vir 'n oomblik die klein begroting wat ons saamskraap, 250 miljoen rand, met die nasionale waterdepartement se totale begroting van 16 miljard. Daardie ANC begroting wat niemand juis kan sê waar die geld heen is nie. Al wat ons hoor is die ANC departement is bankrot en die ANC nasionale regering het nie meer geld nie, want die ekonomie is op sy knieë. Agbare Deputy Speaker, as ons resultate wil wys, moet ons eenvoudig dinge anders begin doen. When it comes to running local councils, no one is doing it better than the DA-run Western Cape, as several independent audit surveys and reports have shown. Still, a lot more needs to be done, and this government remains committed to always learn and to apply global best practices in everything we do. Where we fall short, we go and do our homework, always putting the best interests of our community first. There can be no compromise on this DA promise. I thank you.
The Honourable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm a bit confused because I thought the Minister spoke on the main appropriation and not the adjustments. So I had to make sure. So we are talking about the Western Cape additional adjustment appropriation. So Chair, the ICTP support the Western Cape additional adjustment appropriation, especially Chair for the drought assistance, and also the safe removal of the asbestos in Neisner and Beto. But Deputy Speaker, especially for the money that's going to be made available for the Inzamayetu settlement land, because Speaker, Deputy Speaker, I just read this thing, that these people that were devastated by the fires had to move to open fields at the school, and the matric pass rate dropped from 96 to 72%. So that is welcome relief, and as somebody said, we just want to know from the Minister, where is this land allocated and how soon will this happen? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Kusela.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I must state right from the outset that this DA government that we have in this province is a well-oiled machine, and we take pride in how the government has been performing. It's a responsive, responsible, efficient, and an accountable government whose aim is very clear, and that is to improve the lives of all people in this province. And that is a very clear mandate. It is based on the principle that I welcome, the additional adjustment appropriation. I welcome it because amidst the fiscal uncertainty in our country and the corruption that the ANC has been perpetuating, the province remains an example of fiscal discipline, and we are resolute in ensuring that our people receive the best services that they rightfully deserve. Honourable Deputy Speaker, as the DA-led government, we are fully aware of the threat that the current drought holds for the province and its people. It is for this reason that we've been proactive in our response by, among others, ensuring that funding allocations are made to avert the effect of the drought, which it could have had if this intervention was not made. The 2018 additional adjustment and appropriation clearly demonstrates how we have not only considered the drought, but we have also took cognizance, by extension, of the water crisis and the fire. Just in the Department of Local Government alone, the province allocated over 84.5 million rands for this financial year. And to add on top of this, we have seen now in the main budget, Honourable Christians, there's almost 40 million rands in the local government department alone to address this problem. Now, when someone comes here and speaks, Deputy Speaker, in this forum, in this very august house, and say to us, the DA is not performing, you wonder, where is this person living? On what planet? Where? In which province? So members must not come and dream here, because we don't live with dreamers, we live with doers. We do. We don't dream. So let me further on express my appreciation for the hard-working officials of the department whose resolve has been to avert any kind of crisis when it comes to drought or water or fire, because we've got one of the best disaster management team in this province. In the Eastern Cape, Honourable Deputy Speaker, when you read the Berger this last Tuesday, the article is listed as follows by Candice Pezedenot, and it states, and I quote, even though the Kucha Dam in the Eastern Cape is currently only 12% full. The provincial head of the Department of Water and Sanitation, Portia Makanya, says it's enough water to sustain the province until the next rainy season. That tells you people are dreaming on the other side. If you have 12% and you think you have enough for the entire period, then the ANC remains dreamers. We are delivering here, and because we know, currently that province, because of the Nelson Mandela Bay, people have been seeing how the DA is delivering services. Now we can see the entire province is moving towards the Democratic Alliance. Batabandu sonele, ngoba dipu, amakhala nayazwela, qina mhlali qina, not the nonsense.
Order. Order. I see Minister Marikizela.
Deputy Speaker, thank you very much.
Order, please come to order before the Minister starts.
Deputy Speaker, pressures in human settlements are mounting, with urban in-migration increasing rapidly in provinces like Gauteng and Western Cape. Protests and land invasions have escalated since the EFF and the ANC tabled a motion to expropriate land without compensation, which is sadly interpreted, Mr. Deputy Speaker, by many as a license to invade land with impunity, as we have seen in a number of areas, including Kukuletu. And this is the reality. Let us not joke about this. This is a reality. Because since that motion, people think that you have given them license to invade land. And that is the reality. Now this additional budget...
Order.
This additional budget, Deputy Speaker, came as a result of failure by Gauteng Department in particular to spend its budget. And we are grateful to the National Department of Human Settlements for giving us some of this money so that we can spend it wisely. Contrary to the ill-informed letter I saw on Daily Maverick by the provincial spokesperson of the ANC, who is clearly living in his own world, it's not the Western Cape Department of Human Settlements that is a ticking time bomb. In fact, he must just look elsewhere. Deputy Speaker, while we appreciate the fact that we have benefited from the Gauteng's failure to spend its budget, this has negative impact for the entire department nationally, and I think that must be noted. Because nationally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have suffered the second biggest budget cut, resulting in over 1 billion rand cut for my own budget in the next 3 years. Now, this will have a huge impact on our plans as the sector nationally, particularly in our 50 catalytic projects that we have as a sector nationally. With these 100 million rands we receive from the national government, we are going to solve the problems of imizamo yethu by acquiring land in Hout Bay so that we can formalize that informal settlement. And for your information, Member Davids, it's R5636, 5637, and R4062, so that for your own information, in fact, I can share this information with you so that you can go and look for yourself. But what is important here, as I was listening to you, because even though you support this adjustment, you made some remarks and you questioned whether this money will be used wisely. And as I was listening, I was asking myself whether you've been to Forest Village. Now, Forest Village is a big construction site. This is not the money that is going to be used for plans. We're already working in Forest Village. Some of the houses have already been handed over. I was asking myself whether you've been to the Bela CBD. Because Bela CBD, again, is a huge project where we are building almost 4,200 units, including for military veterans. And we are the very first province to cater for military veterans. So this is where this money is going. I mean, it's going to tangible delivery that is already happening on the ground, Member Davids. We will use the 47 million, as I said, to acquire these 4 parcels of land in Imizamo Yethu. But already I think it also must be mentioned that that devastating fire happened when we already started to develop Imizamo Yethu. We are busy with 1,492 houses already in Imizamo Yethu. And the remaining 53 million will be spent to supplement the bulk infrastructure requirement for the Pela CBD, as I said, which consists of 4,188 housing opportunities for the entire range of income categories, including social housing, rental units, sectional title deeds for BNG, military veterans, FLISP units, student accommodation, and this is what we are doing in the Pela CBD. So we have already completed 630 social housing units and 1,000 private rental units and 102 military veterans units are currently under construction in that particular area. And I think I would urge perhaps the chairperson to invite Member Davids. Oh, thank you very much. So this money will also unlock bulk infrastructure challenges for many other projects in the surrounding areas. And that is why, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are very grateful. But I want to state this, that this budget cut will affect a number of our catalytic projects in Flakeland, and again, I hope you have been there, which is in your area, because when we talk about catalytic projects, as you've been saying, that these are not just pipe dreams. We are talking about mega projects where the contractors are on site, where houses are being built. Some of those houses have already been handed over to some people. If you look at Transex, for example, where we are building more than 8,000 houses, the contractor is already on site. We have started, with the construction of those houses. So I want to assure you, Member Davids, that when we talk about catalytic projects, these are mega projects that will change the lives of our people where we are busy, the areas that I've mentioned. We are very grateful to the National Department, and we hope that we will continue to benefit from the failures of other provinces so that we can move with speed, in our catalytic projects. Thank you very much.
Order. Minister Meyer to respond.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you for the participants during this debate. Honourable Deputy Speaker, although we support the principle that you must reward good governance, we are indeed sad that the people of the Northwest, the people of Limpopo, and the people of Gauteng must suffer again because of the ANC have failed to spend the money in their provinces on the poor. 300 million rand is taken away from Northwest. 150 million rand is taken away from Limpopo. Another 150 million rand is taken away from Gauteng. And there are people here from Gauteng. There is a pattern emerging. Bad ANC governance is being punished, but the irony is that the poor is suffering under the ANC bad governance. But there is hope. It is time for a new beginning in South Africa. I agree with Honourable Member Kasela. The Western Cape is a well-oiled machine. I heard during this debate that Honourable Member Darkmore acknowledges that there is certain individuals in the ANC that are corrupt. I want to repeat what I heard in this House, is that Honourable Member Darkmore acknowledged that there are certain individuals in the ANC that are corrupt. For the record, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Order.
For the record of Hansard, this is an important acknowledgement of Honourable Member Dugmore. We want to encourage him to submit those names to the Commission of Inquiry into state capture. It is his responsibility as a public representative, since he also, like all of us, undertook an oath of office. In the context of that oath of office, he must now appear before Judge Raymond Zondo, who is chairing the Commission of Inquiry into state capture. We're looking forward to see Honourable Member Dugmore appearing before that commission, and we will give him leave of absence in this House. Thank you. Thank you to Minister Bradell for prioritising during the Cabinet meetings support to municipalities for this drought, because he realised that the support is also needed outside the metro, and he is working tirelessly with municipalities because we have a big rural footprint in the Western Cape. I'd also like to thank Honourable Minister for Human Settlements, Minister Madikizela, for your support and influence during the Human Settlements MINMEC, because through your convincing, you have now secured additional money for the Western Cape Human Settlement Development Grant to the tune of 100 million. And we are certainly looking forward that the various oversight committees assist us, and I'm particularly happy that Minister Madikizela has already plans in place to spend the money instead of making new plans. There is a process, there's a project, there are outcome indicators, and there's already contractual obligations in place. And I therefore want to thank honourable members who took part in this debate, and thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. This concludes the second reading for the additional adjusted.
That, as the Minister says, concludes the debate on the consideration of the principle of the bill. Are there any objections to the approval of the principle? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill.
Adjustments, additional adjustments, Appropriation Bill 2017-18 financial year.
The House will now deal with the separate votes in the bill. The Secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of votes and schedule Western Cape adjustments, additional adjustments, Appropriation Bill 2017-2018 financial year, B2 2018.
I first put vote number 8, human resettlements. No objections. Agreed to. I put vote 14, local government. No objections. Agreed to. That concludes the decision on the votes. I now put the schedule to the bill. Any objections to the schedule? No objections. Agreed to. I put clauses 1, 2, 3. No objections. Agreed to. I put the short title. Similarly, no objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the third order.
Finalisation of the Western Cape Adjustments, Additional Adjustments, Appropriation Bill 2017-18 financial year.
I see the Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I came to this House on the 6th of March 2018 to table the Western Cape Additional Adjusted Appropriations Bill 2017-18 and the associated Provincial Government Gazette of allocations to municipalities. Deputy Speaker and honourable members of this House, in summary, the adjusted budget makes provision for additional net spending amounting to 100 million rand, bringing the budget of 59.716 billion to 59.816 billion. The adjusted estimates of expenditure was tabled at the Parliamentary Budget Committee for approval, and the budget vote was also extensively discussed in the two relevant standing committees. Deputy Speaker, I now move that the Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill be finalised and submitted to the Premier to be assented to. I thank you.
Any objections to the bill being finalised? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill.
Western Cape Adjustments, Additional Adjustments, Appropriation Bill 2017-18 financial year.
The bill will now be sent to the Premier for assent. Before I ask the Secretary to read the next order, may I take the opportunity to welcome on the galleries staff from the procedural section of the Provincial Legislature in Gauteng. Most welcome in our midst here. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
Consideration of the principle of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill B3 2018.
I see Minister Meyer again.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and welcome to the colleagues from Gauteng. That's the next province we are targeting. Honourable Deputy Speaker, on the 6th of March 2018, don't worry, good governance will come to Gauteng. It's a matter of time. 2019 is around the corner, and we welcome you for this particular session attending in this House. Honourable Deputy Speaker, on the 6th of March 2018, I tabled the main budget for the Western Cape Government. That budget was tabled under the theme, A Budget for the People. The total budget, Honourable Deputy Speaker, were under the discussion. The budget theme reflects the main mandate of this government, and that is to serve the people. This is in a stark contrast to what is happening in ANC-run provinces. The ANC provinces' budgets are used to milk the people. And talking about milk, we've got a milk case study. In point is the dairy project business at Vrede Farm in the Free State. Instead of budgeting for the poor people, the ANC budgeted for the Guptas, and here are the facts.
Minister Meyer, are you prepared to take a question?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I only take questions from people who are running for the ANC provincial leadership. And if he's running, I'm happy to take a question.
Honourable Dugmore. It's an open-ended reply. It depends. Order.
Okay.
Minister
Now, I
Meyer.
would like to ask,
Speaker,
I understand
is
that was
honourably
yes.
clear.
Minister Meyer, just 1 second. Is it in terms of our rules, yes or no? I'm not sure about that side of the politics.
I want to ask you a question.
You're not prepared?
I have confirmation on my left that he's not running.
Honourable Dugmore, unfortunately not.
So he's too scared to ask a question. Okay.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I think members of this House should know that the court papers filed by the NPA Asset Forfeiture Unit has shown that the dairy farm project was nothing more than a looting ground for the ANC, for the Gupta family. The AFU found that 200 of the 220 million rand of the 220 million rand meant for the poor people through that particular Vrede Farm project, only 2 million rand was spent on the farm. The rest of the money from the Free State budget was stolen by those members whose names Honourable Member Dugmore will submit to the state inquiry into state capture. This, Honourable Members, happened after the National Treasury exposed serious financial misconduct in that particular province. The people of the Free State never benefited from this project. The DA's budget is pro-poor. The DA's budget is for the poor. The ANC, for the record, the ANC steals from the poor. The ANC also promotes thieves like Ace Makasule, the current Secretary General of the African National Congress. I agree with Dr. Roy Jenkinson that the Vrede Dairy Project is a textbook example of ANC corruption, and the ANC makes poor people poorer. Dis reg, Minister Fritz. Honourable members, this state theft under the ANC comes at a price. At the end of December 2017, and I've looked today at those figures, the Western Cape government had a positive cash balance, but the Free State had an aggregate overdraft of 390 million rand overdraft, Mr. Chief Whip, in the Free State. Now, how can you run a government like this? And the 31st of December, third quarter, Free State had an overdraft of 390 million rand. I don't know how they manage that place, if there is management at all, maybe mismanagement. If you don't have management, you have damagement, and we see it in that particular province. In the absence of management, it is damagement. In the Western Cape, we have completely a different narrative. We have before us a budget for the people. The total budget was exclusively 79.4% of the budget is exclusively for the poor, the vulnerable, and the marginalized. 23 billion rand goes to the Department of Health, 22 billion rand goes to the Department of Education, 2.4 billion rand goes to the Department of Human Settlements, and 2.3 billion rand goes to social development, 7.7 billion rand goes to the Department of Transport and Public Works, looking at the infrastructure in those particular areas. But if you analyze this budget, almost 80% goes exactly to where it needed, to those poor people. Our budget focuses on children, the youth, women, victim empowerment support, and childcare. Minister Fritz will further elaborate that during his main budget. Because this is a caring budget, Minister Fritz has made substantive provision for persons with disability in his budget. He will later brief this House about the plans in this particular regard. Honourable Deputy Speaker, on the order paper, it reads consideration of the principle of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill. We have defined those principles when we table this main budget. We call it the Western Cape Fiscal Strategy. Firstly, we call it allocative efficiency, which aims to achieve a balanced allocation of resources that reflects the priorities of this government and programs' effectiveness based on evidence with a greater focus on the reprioritization and trade-offs. Secondly, since we're dealing with the principle, the second principle here is what we call fiscal sustainability. Now, if you have a 390 million rand overdraft, there's clearly no fiscal sustainability in Free State. In this province, we maintain stability in key government programs while managing and responding to key risks, particularly in a constrained economic and fiscal environment. And the third principle, since we are discussing the principle of this bill, is fiscal consolidation, reducing government expenditure in a responsible manner whilst managing the risk and or increasing revenue. Now, this is an important matter. While this ANC speaks about fiscal consolidation in the documentation, what is in practice happening is that you have fiscal expansion. And the way it is working is that last year, the total government debt in South Africa was 2.2 trillion rand. This new budget of the ANC takes the total debt to 3.4 trillion rand. So you cannot speak about fiscal consolidation under the ANC because the debt premium has risen from 2.2 trillion to 3.4 trillion. There's no space for fiscal consolidation. It is a myth. So whenever the minister, the new minister, my friend, Minister Nene, I've got a good working relationship with him, but I will tell him, you cannot speak about fiscal consolidation if you continue appointing more staff and if you increase the debt. Because if you increase your debt from 2.2 trillion to 3.4 trillion, it will have an impact on your debt service cost. And the debt service cost has risen from 170 billion, 147 billion to 166 billion to this financial year coming, 180 billion over the MTF, 200 billion. You cannot speak about fiscal consolidation. The principle in this budget is fiscal consolidation. Lastly, Honourable Deputy Speaker, is fiscal discipline. Yesterday, I attended a meeting of the Wage Bill negotiations. There's no fiscal discipline. The minister that was responsible to reduce the wage bill increased her own staff as a minister. You must have 8 or 6 members in your ministry. Here, Faith Mutambi, no wonder they have no faith in her, has 20 people in her office. You cannot speak about fiscal discipline. You must lead fiscal discipline in your own office. So, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we have no faith in Faith Mutambi. And that's why C is gone. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The Honourable Beerwinkel.
Altyd mors. Dis jy wat mors. Deputy Speaker, thank you. Deputy Speaker, as we expected, the DA went all over the country blaming everyone and everything except themselves for the failures in the Western Cape where they govern. The MEC speaks about principles in the Western Cape, yet he jumps all over the place. We're talking about the Western Cape. To be able to budget for the people, you need to know the people. You need to speak to them. You need to meet with them. You need to understand their needs and conditions under which they live so that you treat them better and accordingly budget for where the needs are most. Just one example, go to any TRA in this province and you'll see the conditions under which people live, and then ask yourself whether this budget is for the people. The regional budget, if you look at that, you would then also take the poverty factor into account and understand how equitable share allocations are not done to take into account the poverty of those areas. The DA should stop boasting about where they are spending when they are actually spending money that has been allocated to national, the very sphere that they continue to bash. You fail dismally even though you grandstand. Follow the President's example. Walk with the people, both literally and figuratively. You were allocated 47.5 billion in equitable share and 12 billion conditional grant. Let me address these conditional grants, Deputy Speaker. National allocations come with specific instructions for projects. You have no right to go into communities and grandstand as if these projects were funded by the DA, and then not even have the decency to acknowledge the councillor or the MPL deployed in that area. These allocations were made for all the people. Use your DA party allocations for your DA campaigns. There are some repeat offenders amongst them. Human settlements is one, sports and rec is the other one, safety and security always on their own, never contact anybody. Some of these MECs sitting here are not even contactable, Deputy Speaker. The records are there. The records, I don't have your cell phone, MEC. The records are there to prove how many times
number is 083.
we've hammered you
Order,
on your
order,
lack
Minister.
of public participation,
Order, Minister. Not now.
which in itself
Minister,
makes a mockery.
please take your seat. Order, order. I want silence for before the member proceeds.
Stop my time. The records are there to prove how many times we've hammered you on your lack of public participation, which in itself makes a mockery of this budget anyway. During every vote in this budget, there's an aspect of public participation. It is a shocking shame in the way you avoid public participation and just tick boxes. Patricia de Lille's fight at this moment is for exactly that, for the public to know what she's being accused of and hear her version. Yet you fight that. Ironically, Human Rights Day was yesterday, and the rights of the people of the Western Cape have not been addressed in this budget. A people's budget, you say, yet you play political games to avoid giving those who keep your homes clean, ensure your safety, care for your health in facilities, to live closer to their employment by giving them social housing in the center of town. Tafelberg site is an example, a constitutional violation. You never create real opportunities for people's voices to be heard. It only works if the color and the area is right. Just this morning, an ex-principal and parents were speaking about a dangerous section on the N2 where learners need to cross, and a child was knocked down last week after numerous requests for safety measures. Speak to education, they reflect full attendance in the classroom. But how the children get to the school and back is a buck that they will pass. Blame Sanral.
They say there must be a walking bus.
Until all are equal and treated fairly, the race debate of this budget allocation will continue because you entrench it and entice it by your actions. One life lost is one life too many. One life lost is one life too many. And our sincere condolences to the loved ones of the cyclist who was killed. But, Deputy Speaker, isn't it just strange how quickly the DA rallied together and rocked up to listen to the people in Fish Hoek, yet we, on a regular basis, repeatedly ask for your intensified presence in areas such as Scottsville, Scottsdene, Nyanga, and all these areas where young lives are snuffed out daily. We here speak for those people because they can't. Neither can they tweet you to attend at the drop of a hat. What's not racist about that? How does the budget address their and other such areas' needs? Then we have an uninformed Australian racist announcing that white farmers should be welcomed into a civilized Australia. How civilized was the verbal altercation that took place first between Quinton de Kock and then lately Rabada, the best bowler in the world, who could have been suspended for entire series because of provocation from a civilized Australia? So what colour were the alleged killers of their wives in Constantia? Twice. What race was the girlfriend and the killer of the Stellenbosch University student? A whole family wiped out in a gated community. Who murdered and gruesomely cut up a young girl's body in Kraaifontein? Your silence as the DA was and is deafening against the insinuation that only uncivilized black people murder white people. The DA white supremacist attitude, which says everything that's white is right,
order, honourable
is
member.
just unacceptable.
Just 1 second, Honourable Chief Whip.
Take a question.
She's not prepared, apparently. No.
I wasn't aware that an Australian minister was a DA
Order.
supporter.
Order, Honourable Gaka.
What's right about your Premier continuously tweeting relentlessly without retribution or punitive action? Everything in this province is about race. Everything. What's right about her always questioning a ruling in this house and being treated differently? You are accusing Patricia de Loo of bringing the party into disrepute and being a bully. When will you deal with the Premier? The double standards you apply is openly racist. Zaki Ahmad, today, in today's burger, has vowed to lay a charge against the Premier at the Human Rights Commission for her tweets on Life Esidimeni. Your leader, Musi Imani, has also condemned the outburst. Josh Budlander says, and I quote, "Jy weet Helen Zille, afgesien van hoe bizar jou tweets is, wat dit sê oor jou politieke onkunde, 'n eie geregtigheid, arrogansie en mees basiese vlak is walglik. Die oorweldigende gevoel by die lees van jou tweet is net waaglik, dis net afstootlik," unquote. This is the very person you want us to believe is capable of looking after the interests of all the people of this Western Cape when compiling a so-called people's budget? How do you know that all psychiatric patients here in the Western Cape are treated well? When last did the Premier go into a hospital to see how staff violate the very principles their seniors instill in them? Do you know how long terminally ill patients lie for hours waiting for transport to take them back to where they come from because there isn't enough allocated from equitable share for ambulances? The budget supposedly for the people. We speak, Deputy Speaker, from a lived experience, not the people's budget on paper and in meetings with consultants. We represent the people you are budgeting for. Start by looking right here at your front row, example of your racist budget. One black woman on your budget for cabinet. The back row, all positions of power as chairpersons. Look at your race and your women representation. Yes. When questioned about specific programs for women in different votes, the general response is, we are training more women in our department.
Order.
Totally missing the point. This is a people's budget. I, in particular, Deputy Speaker, am humbled by my party to be afforded the opportunity to attend study tours out of the country. The tragedy, though, is these initiatives and instructions are never implemented. Isn't that fruitless and wasteful expenditure? Why is this budget not reflecting specific women's programs in different votes? Yet fiscal dumping is happening at the speaker's rooms where security measures are being installed. What is the person appointed to be dealing with women's programs doing? Because you have no respect for women. Your leader right here and some of your unmanageable MECs have played their patriarchal hand in showing their verbal abuse against women on this side of the House often. It's disgusting. This is the caliber of person or man that the Premier feels is fit for purpose to sit in on the planning of a people's budget. Consult the Hansard for Rodney Lentitz shouts at us across the floor about his DA. He even did that on an international tour. Today, all of you have the most disparaging insults to fling at him, even threatening him with legal action, because like Patricia de Lille, who is your latest victim, he threatens to expose your racist double standards. We are enjoying the unraveling of your squeaky clean DA image of upholders of the law. So let's look at how this people's budget upholds the law. Our annual reports process, Deputy Speaker, is not complete because the DA feel that they would rather take the AG to court as opposed to adhering to laws and regulations for Vote 11. Remember, these are the clean audit masters. Regulations with regard to accounting by principals and agents from page 133 to 142 of that document is very clear. You can read it. Add to that page 595 of the budget book, which spells out the role that Casidra has to play on behalf of the department, and that's the crux of the matter. Page 117 of the DORA is also equally clear, and if you want, I can read it. If my time allows, I will, Speaker. You have not exhausted all the avenues, yet you want to take the AG to court. I hope you get your lesson there. Now let's move to the other upholder of law, this move of the Environmental Commissioner, which on page 87 of your own constitution compels you to do it, yet you went to public participation because it suited your agenda to amend and make something which is considered compulsory into a discretionary clause when you don't even have the manpower to deal with your current load. Section 24 of the Constitution addresses the environmental rights of these very people that you say you're supposedly budgeting for. Why are you so afraid of the independence that this commissioner will bring? Deputy Speaker, the lived experience of the people of the Western Cape will tell you that they do not agree that this budget speaks to their needs. And if I, do I still have time? Can I read page 117? 117 of DORA, Deputy Speaker, says, and it's the CAST program of agriculture, it says to create a favorable and supportive agricultural service environment for the farming community, in particular, subsistence, smallholder, black commercial farmers within strategically identified grain, livestock, and horticulture production areas. To provide effective agricultural support service, promote and facilitate agricultural development by targeting beneficiaries of land reform, restitution and redistribution, and other black producers who have acquired land through private means and are engaged in value-adding enterprises domestically or involved in export, to address damage to infrastructure caused by floods. That exactly is what Casidra is doing on behalf of the department. So where is your argument that it should be a transfer payment as opposed to goods and services, which the AG says is what it should be? What do they stand to lose to follow the laws and regulations of accounting principles of 2016? I thank you.
Order. Honourable Minister Fritz.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, my cabinet colleague, Dr. Ivan Meyer, has quite amply set out a clear path of government expenditure for this upcoming financial year. And I really want to, I think this House actually need to, the way you have conceptualized with your team at the back, I really think we need to applaud your efforts in this regard, Dr. Meyer. In fact, in an incredibly constrained fiscal environment, the finance minister has admirably ensured that the DA government continues to maintain investment into those programs and priorities that focus on the poor. And you know that. You know that. Contrary to the overused and hollow ANC narrative of this budget being designed for the rich, now everything was the rich. You must show me the rich. I would really like to go see my money go to the rich. Can't we go, yes? I believe Minister Meyer deserves applause for the job well done in protecting the poor. Deputy Speaker, a very interesting report of the Nawangau Performance and Expenditure Review completed for the national government, and remember, through the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, to remember, it was a commission, a review commissioned by the national government, shows that the DA government spends the greatest portion of its budget on transfer funding to the NGOs, and it spends the most on poor people than any other province when we look per capita of poor persons in the province. And according to the report, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Member Beerwanker, the Western Cape spends 82% per poor person than the national average. The closest province in comparison to us was the Northern Cape at 62% above the national average. And the lowest was Limpopo province, which spent 35% below the national average, below. Not only that, the report also uses the Western Cape as a benchmark how NGOs should be funded. Now we hear a whole lot of noise from you, but these are your own government saying this stuff. Deputy Speaker, the government is decidedly and proactively pro-poor in this province. Speaker, this budget was formulated under extremely trying economic conditions of low economic growth, a vastly diminished tax with a club scalums in the tax revenue service and collections, and high unemployment in our country. All these factors and others can be laid right at the door of the ANC, like many of my colleagues have pointed out. The ANC has failed to build this economy, full stop. Nothing else, period. It is the ANC which has almost destroyed SARS. You have destroyed SARS. You have destroyed PRAZA. And you have destroyed ESCOM. And you are busy destroying SASA. You are busy destroying SASA. You are a disgrace. That's why you won't be elected in this province again, ever. I promise you.
Order, Minister Fritz. Just 1 second. Honourable Magaka. Order.
No, into endiyikhayelayo ngulamnutye ble mfitshane wogabha isikhomba ngayo la ndoda. Ukusihlukumeza ukuya ukhonjwa indoda emfitshane etyebileyo ngomntu omfitshane otyebileyo. You know. Yeah. Iyasihlukumeza. Asinobe sikhonjwa yilaa ndoda apha. Makathethe kakuhle sive angasikhombi. Siqhela kakuba asondanga zakho.
Order, Honourable Kaka. The gist of what you said, I just got at the end. That is that you must speak to the other side and not point at them. Honourable Fritz, you may continue, but refrain from pointing to the other side. Is there? Honourable Fritz, you may continue.
Yeah, they even talking about fingers. They are so petty and so useless. That's what they can talk about, fingers. Deputy Speaker, the ANC must explain why things are so bad economically in this country. It has become really difficult to fund projects in our province and programs that are most needed by the poor. And the sad thing is, it's the poor that's suffering by their corruption. What should really disgust all of us is that even the ANC shouts and howls from the benches on that side, the ANC has never even once in this house acknowledged the culpability in the economic crisis of our people. They've never said that they are culpable. They've milked this country's coffers dry through a complex network of corrupt senior ANC politicians, cronies and cadres. It is estimated that the Guptas alone managed to shift more than 100 billion to offshore accounts over the last 10 years, and they all sat here in this house keeping quiet about how the country has been milked. And they denied it all the times until it came out. They denied it.
Order.
State-owned enterprises, the ANC-controlled municipalities, government departments and provinces like Free State and Mpumalanga, the amount of money lost to the fiscus literally runs into hundreds of billions. And they all sat here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and they said nothing about it. They are as guilty as all those other ANC people. It is the looting and theft that the ANC's, and that is the ANC's way. This is what makes their criticism of us in this house ring rather hollow and empty. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, that brings me to the one factor that almost more than anything else has contributed to the mess we are in. Why is it that almost without exception, in all cases where there have been cases of corruption, maladministration, fraud and looting of SOEs, government and entities, the common denominator has been ANC deployed cadres. Now you can ask me about SASSA.
Just 1 second, there's a member standing up. I'm listening.
Relevance, Deputy Speaker.
Relevance?
Yes, there's no relevance from what
This order, this is
it has been allowed a long time for the political...
Member, yes, you raised your point of order is valid, but relevance...
You are dealing with the...
Order. When the chair speaks, you take your seat, please. This is a wide-ranging political debate. The limited debates start tomorrow when we do the individual votes. So the minister may continue.
I want to show through this debate how corrupt and how the thievery is continuing.
Order, Minister. Just 1 second.
Speaker, Deputy Speaker, to you. However, we can go haywire, but we must consider the agenda for today, which is the Western Cape Appropriation Bill. And the member here is not dealing with that. So I'm saying we agree that you can do and speak as he wishes, but he must go and consider.
Yes, Member Chacham, we've always allowed a wide scope in this debate, so I'm not going to curb the Minister unnecessarily. Minister, you're almost done. Your time is running out. You may
I just want to quickly talk about how the same ANC, the water crisis, that they accuse us, Honourable Deputy Speaker, that for 3 years they said we have done nothing, but they were the opposition. They sat in those benches. So they are weak opposition. They were a useless government, and they're even a worse opposition. And let me talk about the national member, the national minister, Bokonyani. Let me speak about her. You know, she is the cause of the crisis in the province with the water. What happens? She gets promotion by even this new president. She gets promotion by him. She's now the communications minister. This is what the ANC is. You see, you are rotten to the core. Your whole existence is rotten. And the problem with you is at this time that you will all disintegrate. And what will happen to you? You need
Minister,
EFF.
just 1 second. Honourable, order, Honourable Bierwinkel.
Deputy Speaker, this is not funny anymore. It's really not funny anymore.
Order.
The MEC for Finance made the point that we are discussing the principles of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill.
Order, allow the member to take a point. Member, I'm listening. Please continue.
We are considering, he made the point repeatedly, what principles we are discussing. Now, that MEC, I'm sorry, let me put my hand back. The MEC is going all over the show, talking about as if Minister Mkonyana is responsible for bringing the rain to this province. What absolute nonsense.
Member, that touches the same point as your colleague next to you raised, and I've allowed the member to speak wide. Although the minister introduced certain principles, this is in fact really the second reading debate, which is a wide debate.
There's a very important, simple
so please
principle.
Continue, Minister.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, there's a simple principle. You can't have money if the money gets stolen by this ANC. How can you use money? if the money gets stolen constantly at the national level? And on one level, we just heard earlier from the housing MSC that in another province, they just spend the money, then it comes to us. Because they're not only corrupt, they're incapable, they're incompetent. And the reason why I know I come from the ANC, I know how corrupt they are. They are very, very corrupt. I thank you.
Order. Order. Order, order, before we see the Honourable Christians. Honourable Nkonlu, I've asked for order, please. Order. Honourable Christians, you may proceed.
Deputy Speaker, the ACDP supports the 2017-18 Western Cape Appropriation Bill. Minister Meyer mentioned a couple of things, and the one thing that he said, several fiscal and service delivery risks remain. And amongst other, he mentioned the VAT increase. I believe the VAT increase is an assault against the poor and the vulnerable, and we reject that. Another point that leads to volatility and put our economy at risk is the expropriation of land without compensation. It's foolish, irresponsible, and I don't believe that the EFF will be swallowed by the ANC because of this move. I wonder how long will this romance last between the EFF and the ANC. We know that the EFF is a socialist movement and they want everything to belong to the state. Everything must belong to the state, and we cannot agree with that because two wrongs do not make a right. But Deputy Speaker, I want to say the following. I read an article today in the paper about education. Pupils are our biggest investment, David Harrison writes in the Cape Times. And he says, as South Africa seeks a new path to economic growth and development, we must face up to the reality that our public education system is too big and keep on failing. He says, and we know, we debated this over and over again, that only 50% of our pupils entering grade 1 gets to grade 12, and that's concerning. And he says the following, he says there's three factors for the poor performance of the education. He says the one is teachers who cannot teach or who won't teach. Now that is saying, I will not work. A bulk of our money goes to human resources. Teachers are saying, we will not work. Is this putting more money and resources to teachers that do not want to work? We must get rid of them. School governing bodies and principals that cannot lead properly. We must get rid of them. That is immediate things that we can do to rectify our education in this province. He further says that learners who can't learn at a pace and level which they are being taught. Surely, Deputy Speaker, if you put, and we spoke about this in the standing committee, where we said teacher and learner ratios classes is too large. But there's fundamental problems in our system that needs to be rectified. And we cannot see year in and year out. He even said, we don't know the amount of money we pay for learners repeating standards over and over. It's a huge amount of money that goes into that. So I would want the minister that they have some sort of evaluation system to see if these people are producing. If they're not, they must be fired because our pupils are our future. Thank you,
Member. Your time has expired. Honourable Beverly Schaefer.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Over the past 10 years, the Western Cape has gone through a series of monumental changes. No longer can we look at this province through the same lens. Today, we face, like so many other places, a growing range of adversities and challenges in the 21st century, from the effects of climate change and the subsequent impact of drought in the economy, from listeriosis to a jump in the fourth industrial revolution. All will have effect, all will have an impact. Yet it is resilience in the face of adversity that assists cities, towns or provinces to adapt and transform in the face of these challenges in preparing for both the expected and unintended consequence. Resilience will shape the future of cities and provinces alike, and resilience will shape South Africa going forward. If governments want to become sustainable, then resilience must be taken into account. A well-run government will not ignore this important factor when putting together its budgets. Deputy Speaker, I commend this well-run government of the Western Cape for a budget that is exactly that. It's a budget that has been stable over the past 9 years, a budget that is sustainable going forward, and a budget that focuses on addressing the mitigating risks such as drought and the water crisis. This is a budget for the people. This is a resilient and sustainable budget for the province. The Employment Outlook Survey, Q2 of 2018, released by Manpower Group South Africa, has found that despite the economy still weighed down by economic uncertainty and factors such as the drought in the Cape, business and consumer confidence has improved. Employers reported that the strongest hiring prospects were in the Western Cape, with an outlook of above 11%, the highest in the country. Speaker, this is a budget for the people, a resilient and sustainable budget for the province. In stark contrast, after close to 9 years of gross negligence and financial mismanagement under Jacob Zuma, the ANC has left the economy on a flat line. Billions of rands have been systematically siphoned from the public purse to a select few under the ANC's watch, with the mismanagement of public funds plunging South Africa further into debt. And what do, Speaker? They deliver an anti-poor budget. The ANC-run national government slaps an extra % on value-added tax, making the people of South Africa pay for their Zupta sins. The very poorest of poor will take the brunt of that impact. If this is not one of the most anti-poor national budgets I have ever seen, then look again. Because, Speaker, raising of VAT by 1 percentage point could mean, inclusive of a value-added additions along a value chain, we could at times pay up to 2% more tax on specific daily items. It is estimated that the increase in VAT could cost the poor in the region of 2 billion. Speaker, the ANC national government's anti-poor budget could not be better illustrated as that of Luke Jordan's media statement in the Daily Maverick this year, when he said, and I quote, "Almost 3 billion a year taken out of schools when children cannot read. 10 billion taken out of homes when the housing backlog is vast. 12 billion taken out of roads and rail and water. And 5 billion taken out of municipal infrastructure when service delivery is perpetually behind. 3 billion taken out of building jails and courts when those are overcrowded and crime is rampant. And 200 million taken out of the NPA's budget, the equivalent of hundreds of lawyers and investigators, and the list goes on. Speaker, the anti-poor budget of the ANC speaks even louder when 3 billion will be spent just on VIP services and security for 2018, when President Ramaphosa's salary hike means that he earns 700,000 more than Jacob Zuma. And can you believe this, Deputy Speaker? The land reform budget at national level has been cut again, sitting at half of what it was in 2007 and 2008 at the end of Mbeki's presidency. What a scandal. Yes, this is most definitely the ANC's government's anti-poor budget. And so while 45 billion of state funds were lost in 2017 on irregular and unauthorized expenditure by organs of state and state-owned enterprises, while the National Department of Water and Sanitation is under forensic audit on the overdraft of close to 3 billion, while the Western Cape still waits for the money from 2009, and while municipalities in the Northwest, the Eastern and the Northern Cape are mere weeks away from reaching day zero, no plan, no resilient or sustainable solutions. The ANC goes even so far as to refer the Western Cape's drought as a myth, and even the drought has been declared a national disaster. Indeed, the only myth to the ANC is sound and effective governance. If our drought is fabricated for kickbacks, as Member David claims, please do tell us what your explanation is for the severe droughts in other ANC-run provinces. While the national budget is clearly anti-poor, the Western Cape is no doubtedly a budget for the people, a resilient and sustainable budget for the province. Ours is a budget that has continued to drive economic growth and jobs across the province, producing 106,000 more jobs than anywhere else to contribute to the economy. Ours is a budget that, through Westgrow, has brought in 17.5 billion into the Western Cape through trade, investment and destination marketing. Ours is a budget that, by combining economic promotion with tourism, has added 13 new flight routes, contributing 4.8 billion to the economy. Ours is a budget that, through partnerships, has successfully driven water-wise tourism and significantly driven down the water footprint of this sector. And through this government and this budget, the Western Cape is still the only province to launch a drought portal for the agricultural sector, the only province to have conducted a household centres for agri-workers, the only province with land support advisory desks, and as a result, the only province with a 62% land reform success rate, in stark contrast of the ANC's embarrassing 2%. Adopting land expropriation without compensation is the ANC's move to divert attention away from its complete and utter incompetence. So while Minister Moshaban has been quoted as saying that she has a hole in her head, let's just leave that for another debate, Deputy Speaker. But finally, let me say this. You can tell a lot about a government by the way in which it spends its money. Where the ANC has lost billions in corruption and wasteful expenditure, it creates a budget to tax the poor. Where the DA-led Western Cape has put its money, our economy grows and our province creates the jobs. This budget speaks for itself. The Western Cape is no doubtedly a budget for the people, a resilient and sustainable budget for the province. I thank you.
The Honourable Bomba.
Thank you. Honourable Premier, Madam Deputy Speaker, the members of the House, the guests from the Provincial Legislature, Gauteng, good afternoon. Thank you, Minister Mayor and your team for budget allocation that seems to be responsive to the service needs of the people. Again, health received the bigger slice, which is about 37% of the total provincial budget allocation. Deputy Speaker, it is worth mentioning that throughout the years, the Western Cape health allocation has always been bigger, even from other provinces. In 2017-2018 budget year, our share was about 36% for the total provincial budget. For 2018-19, it has grown by 1%. We need also to acknowledge Gauteng has just increased their provincial allocation to 37%, which is now we're equal. Of course, they have to meet the challenges related to the Esidimeni litigation. Just to understand, to compare apples with apples, the national average in terms of the health budget allocation from the total provincial allocation is about 33%. So you get worried, for example, Eastern Cape, the budget allocation has been 3% less in terms of compared with the national average. KZN, Mpumalanga, Free State, Northwest, one may probably interpret as that they don't prioritize health because the budget allocation remains unchanged despite their health challenges. The demand for the healthcare continues to grow, and this is unlikely to change in the short term given the trends in the social determinants of health and well-being. And a worrying trend is the increase in the people that are presenting with multiple interacting and compounding health problems. This situation places the provincial health systems under enormous strain, and in the context of significant budgetary constraints and with a drought, 2018-19 is likely to be a very challenging year. Sadly, the excitement of getting a bigger slice of the pie gets dampened by the fact that the budget is not increasing in real terms, let alone responding to the escalating burden of disease. Healthcare costs are unsustainable, and health spending is higher than economic growth. It means business has to be unusual if you compare the prices of medicine, for example, meaning that you have to swim across the tide. It means an urgency in health reforms that needs to be done immediately. For example, our shortfall, which is about 439 million, and if you could translate loosely, we're talking about 900 health professionals that could be lost if we convert that. The health sector is facing a budget shortfall actually in most of the 6 provinces, except for Gauteng, which has received an additional boost, as I indicated, of about 2.8 billion for the litigation. Western Cape Health has begun to make bigger moves from marginal efforts at cost-cutting and efficiencies to fundamental transformation in the way we do business, so that to ensure a strong, coherent, and resilient health system. We have embarked upon implementation of a transformation strategy. However, a space and time is required for the re-engineering of structures and processes necessary for the impact of health system transformation so that we can see its fruition. Initiatives such as MIP, which is meaning Management Efficiency and Alignment Project, we've already begun on such. This has been undertaken with the aim to improve the efficiencies in administrative structures, functions, and processes across the various levels and offices in the department. Top management has endorsed the purpose, functions, and the architecture of this at the various levels. The intention is to achieve a 10% saving in the managerial administrative support services in order to protect the clinical services. Deputy Speaker, notwithstanding the Western Cape population that has increased actually by 3% from the previous figures, the allocation in equitable share remained the same. For example, in the Eastern Cape, they have lost almost 8% of their population throughout to other provinces, where they've migrated to other provinces. But unfortunately, money doesn't follow the patient when it comes to the Western Cape, like it does in other provinces. For example, Gauteng, they do invoice Mpumalanga and Limpopo for the tertiary services they render. And again, these 2 provinces, they also get allocation of the tertiary grant, yet they don't render those services. So if, for example, now, if Gauteng can bill the other provinces for these patients, yet if Western Cape will copy and paste this initiative to cover the cost of that 8% of the patients coming from the Eastern Cape, just imagine that how that will be interpreted. It could be a political war, yet it's happening throughout in all other provinces. The other challenges, and also probably just to add that, I wouldn't expect any person from the opposition to comment about health, because we are saving other provinces where, for example, the issue of the oncology in the KZN, all the registrars are being sent to us. We send our EMS people to the Eastern Cape. Now we'll be accommodating the Free State for some of their services. So when it comes to the Western Cape, when it comes to health, no politician can politicize health.
Order.
No politician can, because we are doing a lot for all other provinces. Because for us, health is too important to be reduced to a political football. The other challenge is facing the health system as a whole is a growth in the elderly population. Of course, we rejoice that people now can live longer, with life expectancy that has increased, with an average male living up to 61 years, and then for the female, the average about 67 years. However, we do know this means an increase in people living with chronic conditions, needing constant clinic visits, and thus it means that there's a need for additional resources. South Africa also has got an influx of foreign nationals who are uninsured and put more burden on public health services. For some of you who have been, for example, in the Cedarburg, in the areas of Cedarburg, where we have identified some children are even born out of the health system because they're afraid to go for antenatal care. They think that they require in terms of their identity and all of those. So in my budget speech, I will elaborate more on some of our responses to these challenges. Deputy Speaker, in health, no one is turned away. No one turned away. It's unlike when you say the school is full, therefore you cannot take any more. In health, you cannot turn any person away. You cannot close hospitals. Even if they are full, people can one on top of each other. You cannot close. You cannot close hospitals, you cannot close clinics, even if they are full. People, remember, have got the freedom to move anywhere, around anywhere. It is their constitutional right. We do face also unforeseen circumstances. For example, the issues like where you end up the hospital catching fire, the issue of the storms, the issue of the drought. Now we are in the middle of listeriosis. Nobody planned about such, and yet we have to respond. So we cannot say the budget was 21 billion, therefore we cannot respond. We respond to the issues that are outside the health system. So just like listeriosis, you have to go to the taxi ranks and all of those, yet it's not even our core function, for example. Therefore, we have to think on our feet when an outbreak or disaster
Order,
hits us.
Minister, just finish off. Your time has expired.
Okay. Therefore, in response to the health system pressures, the department uses multi-pronged approaches in order to respond to such. In my budget speech, I'll elaborate more.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has now really expired. I see the Honourable Makaleni.
Deputy Speaker, this debate comes when there is a great sense of uncertainty and growing disunity in the province as a result of the DA Swartgevaar tactics in response to the successful adoption of motion on land expropriation without compensation in the National Assembly. This message of fear has reached as far as Australia, where Home Affairs and Immigration Minister Peter Dutton quoted to have said, "White South African farmers deserve special attention because of the horrific circumstances of land seizure and violence in the country. Unfortunately, a critical period such as this needs a cool-headed approach. Such an approach is well captured in the words of famous Xhosa musician Stompie Mavi. Khanibeke phansi intonga, kusekude phambi kwenu. Khaniyekeni ingqumbo, ixesha liyabaleka, masixhesheni umanyano." We have to use the song today to call on the DA to stop beating war drums and joining the work to foster unity amongst the people and accelerate land reform in the country. The likes of Masizole Mnqasela and Basil Kivito should lend a hand in assisting us in debunking this Swartgevaar instilled in the people by DA leaders. This is not the time to instill fear in the people. This is the year for renewal, unity, and jobs. Unfortunately, that is not something we can achieve through this budget. In contrast to what is claimed by the MEC, this budget does not place people at the center and certainly does not create public value. It is high time the DA learns the principle of nothing without us, nothing about us without us. Communities for which this budget is intended to serve had no say on how it was structured. This budget is also not doing anything to address community challenges. The Western Cape is a leading province in terms of women and child matters. Last year alone, the province experienced a crisis of more than 30 young children and women who were killed brutally in this province. Yet there is no allocation to address this challenge. This government continues its failure to protect women and children's rights. The only money that is there for gender-based violence comes through the condition grants from national government. The majority of the population are women in this province, yet there are no programs to support women empowerment that are funded through this budget. In fact, we have been calling for a pro-women budget. This budget will further entrench difficulty for poor in the province, as a retrenchment of employees in the Department of Health that is currently underway and the vacancy rate that is ever increasing in all provincial government departments will have a direct impact to the people. This is happening when in the 2018, we were told the economic growth will contract and lead to more job losses. This is a direct contradiction to what the MEC said last year, that the economy will grow at 1.3% in 2017 and 2% in 2018, which could lead to job creation. He failed to grow the economy, and this province reported 31,000 job losses. Life in the Western Cape is becoming more difficult under his watch. All this is happening when we were told by the Honourable MEC Mayor that this budget will continue to protect the protection of the frontline services through investment in education, health, and social development. All MECs said the budget increase does not take into account population growth and therefore affecting the net value of the budget. People are growing tired of DA lies. This is evident in the people's boycott of the nomination process for clinic nominations and hospital boards, on which only DA members of parliament were appointed to serve. We thank the people who raised the concern about the application forms and used this process, which are designated to create spaces for DA cronies. As a result of their effort, this government was forced to extend the process by a further 2 months that people see through the DA lies. The MEC mentioned that 6 youth cafes have been established across the province. In fact, let me correct you, Minister, the number is 8. He went further to announce that the additional 4 youth cafes are planned, while MEC Fried said they are planning to only have 3. Last year, it was the Honorable MEC Debbie Schaefer and the Premier talking about 7 youth cafes. How can they all get confused with what's supposed to be a game changer? This is a clear indication that there is no communication between cabinet ministers. We can only conclude that the division that has brought the Cape Town City Council to its knees are slowly coming to the legislature. Other critical indicators of youth development are set for failure. When the entire country is abuzz about the importance of building and maintaining school infrastructure, including addressing sanitation issues, this province does the opposite through cutting its infrastructure spending. This is despite an audit report by Equal Education highlighting the issue of poor sanitation and safety in schools. Enrollment of learners in school in the province is over 1.1 million in 2018 in the public school, yet the government is lowering the number of schools from 16, of new schools from 16 to 14 and closing down more schools. More disappointing is that only 36,000 learners can attend mod centers, which has been standing at 181 since inception of the program. This is while hundreds of school children are led into drugs and many others die at the hands of gangs and on the basis in the Cape Flats, on the daily basis in the Cape Flats. What is shocking is that the budget for mod centers is cut from 152 million to a mere 127 million. The Western Cape is embarking on a strategy to reduce alcohol harms, which almost all departments injecting funds into it. How do we achieve this when the DA leader, Musi Maimane, has no shame drinking in public? This is why the DA is putting on the table the bill to allow schools, alcohol to be sold in schools. This is a budget of more rhetoric and empty promises by the DA, the same promises they sold to the people when they tricked them into believing that GF Joster will be renovated and later relocated, and to date there is no budget to rebuild Joster.
In the absence of Honourable Joseph, I see Honourable Mackenzie.
Deputy Speaker, before I start, let me welcome Mr. Samuel Matemane, a PhD student from UWC. He's from the DRC. He's with us today. He's doing his PhD in public law, so welcome to this Parliament. Deputy Speaker, on the 6th of March, the Western Cape Finance Minister, Dr. Ivan Meyer, delivered what can only be described as the people's budget. The Minister's pro-poor and infrastructure-led budget will contribute significantly to job creation and the Western Cape economy. Minister Meyer's budget not only ensured the financial stability of the Western Cape, but also complements our provincial strategic plan. Having gone through the annual performance plan to see where and how the money will be allocated, I was pleased to see that the Minister prioritized the poor people of this beautiful province by ensuring that this budget not only an economic game changer, but specifically on a pro-poor focus. Deputy Speaker, however, it would be remiss of me to ignore the fact that this budget is negatively affected by the irresponsible and corrupt ANC national government. In an attempt to recover the billions of rands lost through corruption and state capture, the then Minister of Finance, Malusi Gigaba, announced a 1% increase in VAT and a 52% increase in the fuel levy. This, coupled with a consistent year-on-year imposed budget cuts on the Western Cape government, means that we have to often seek ways to ensure that our core mandate is not compromised. The VAT and the fuel levy increase, Deputy Speaker, should not be understated. A 1% VAT increase on the Western Cape budget of 59 billion is roughly 300 million rand on goods and services. That means the Western Cape government now have to go cut services by 300 million rand to accommodate the Zupta tax. Deputy Speaker, this imposed budget cut and adjustments that has been made is not necessarily a VAT increase. We can actually call it an ANC-sponsored corruption tax. It's a corruption-added VAT. The DA prioritizes the poor, where the ANC takes money from the poor and spends it lavishly on the cronies. In fact, the current Minister of Enterprises, Public Enterprise, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, revealed recently that the ANC-led national government, of which he is a cabinet minister, by the way, as corruption has conservatively cost the taxpayer 100 billion rand. The tragic consequence of this unabated corruption is that the poor will continually be punished. One such example is the ANC-led Eastern Cape government, which established itself as the corruption capital of this country under the ANC. Despite the fact that they're currently spending 253 million rand on management and financial consultant, they still received an unqualified audit and also lost 2.4 billion rand through irregular expenditure. Compare this to where the DA governs. The DA brand offers unparalleled good governance standard, where we govern the best services and game-changing initiatives are the rule rather than the exception. Take the water crisis, for example. Despite facing the worst drought in over a century, despite the fact that the ANC-led National Department of Water and Sanitation bankrupted the department, the DA changed this disaster into an opportunity for hope. The building of new infrastructure, coupled with the maintenance of the existing infrastructure, which, by the way, is not budgeted for and is not the mandate of the Western Cape government, we still use that disaster and turned it around into opportunities and created jobs and opened up a new water economy with incentives for market exploration for small and medium-scale entrepreneurs. That is what the DA do with the disasters. We've now set an international standard for reducing water consumption from 1 billion litres a day to 520 million litres a day. That is what the DA do when disasters strike. We've implemented sustainable water solutions, including various augmentation programs, which again was not funded by national government. The city of Cape Town had to use money that meant for service delivery to do this. Take a quick glance at what's happening in the other provinces. The Northwest, the Limpopo, and the Eastern Cape is currently facing a similar crisis, and they're likely to reach day zero very soon, Deputy Speaker, sadly so. In fact, they are using those opportunities for more corruption and unabated looting. Under the leadership of this Dr. Ivan Meyer and the Premier, Helen Zille, this government pulled a rabbit out of a hat and produced a pro-poor, stable budget that will give effect to important services such as health, education, and social development. We're currently in Gauteng, based on their budget, they put a freeze on infrastructure when it comes to health maintenance. This DA-led government has strategically prioritized funds to ensure this province remains the leader in effective and clean governance. Deputy Speaker, the billions allocated for infrastructure from public works, transport and public works will create a sustainable water augmentation and resource management in the city of Cape Town and the Western Cape. The apprenticeship game changer and the Premier's Youth Advancement Program will further and combine create opportunities for 12,000 young people, producing 11,300 qualified apprentices for the labour market. With this budget, Deputy Speaker, the Youth Development Program will receive an additional, and Member Makaleni, 4 youth cafes, expanding the capacity to 22 youth, Deputy Speaker. This is another example of the DA's committed to youth development. This DA-led government has placed significant emphasis on economic development opportunities. With this budget, the Provincial Treasury allocated 1.3 billion rand for the promotion of economic development and tourism, which will grow the Western Cape economy and create more job opportunities and investment opportunities, Deputy Speaker. It is very clear from where the DA governs, unlike the ANC, there is a difference. We put the people first, we prioritize our funding, and we ensure no money gets corrupted, unlike where the ANC governs. Deputy Speaker, we also know that SIA has recently received another 19 billion rand in state funding. This money-sucking entity, which continuously use funding down the drain, use billions of rands down the drain, whereas the Western Cape government uses money allocated it. That 19 billion, including the 15 million, very conservatively estimated, that's been used for deputy... complete sentence. The 15 million that's been used for President Zuma's legal fees is money that should go to the poor.
Thank you,
and this government will make sure we recover that money when we get to the national government in 2019. I thank you.
Order. Time has expired. Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, a key priority for Western Cape government is the development of sustainable integrated human settlements that will allow its residents access to social and economic opportunities close to where they live. Section 26 of the Constitution says that everyone has the right to adequate housing within their available resources. Unlike the ANC, the DA with its available resources goes beyond just delivering houses because we constantly exceeded our delivery target. Despite a 1 billion rand budget cut in the next 3 years, budget for the 2018-19 financial year of just over 2.3 billion will provide 20,000 housing opportunities. Deputy Speaker, again, I want to congratulate Minister Bonginkosi Madikizela and his department for winning the 2017 National Gavin Begi Award. I am extremely proud of this department's effort in fulfilling the mandate to deliver housing opportunities to qualifying and deserving residents. Again, I want to congratulate Minister Bonginkosi Madikizela for winning the Gavin Begi Award for 2017.
Order, order.
I am extremely proud of this department's effort in fulfilling the mandate to deliver housing opportunities to qualifying and deserving residents. I say this because during the 2017-18 financial year, with a budget just over 2.5 billion, again the department has exceeded its housing targets of 18,000. The department's housing policies offers a range of support options for different segments of the housing market. The approach is to encourage market-based solutions for housing provisions in gap markets and for self-help initiatives in an attempt to free up resources to service the poorest and most vulnerable that cannot meet their own housing needs. Deputy Speaker, in the previous year, the department embarked on the Informal Settlement Support Plan. This plan forms part of the Living Cape framework and moves to improve the living conditions of the communities of the Western Cape. For the 2018-19 financial year, the program will benefit 60 informal settlements. 25,021 plots will be upgraded. Beneficiaries of this program will also receive title deeds for their property. To mention a few, Kayamandi with 3,011 households, Rabo with 5,270 households, and Mossel Bay with 3,493 households. This is the budget under the DA government for the poor, creating public value. On the other hand, the ANC's track record on housing delivery under-delivers and over-promises. Once the DA exceeds their target yearly, normally the ANC will complain if I compare the Western Cape to another province. So let's look at the District 6, which is a national land reform project which includes housing. After 24 years of waiting, District 6 claimants are nowhere closer to receiving the homes they were promised in 2014 by the national government. Only 245 units were built in the 2017-18 financial year, and over 1,000 claims remain unprocessed. If this was a Western Province project, these claimants will be settled because we deliver better. Deputy Speaker, the DA delivers. The implementation 16 land release projects will yield close to 10,000 housing opportunities. Biggest projects being Dal Yosafat and Bella with a total of 6,266 housing opportunities. This department is particularly proud of its innovative and forward-thinking Bella CBD development. So listen on this one. A different level income residential project. It provides 4,188 units that cater for the subsidy market, bonded subsidy market, which is the fleece. Social housing, open market rental unit, student accommodation, and freestanding open market units. This initiative goes further and brings essential 550-bed regional hospital, day clinic, and ambulance services to the heart of the community. Deputy Speaker, our successes do not stop here.
Order. Honourable Chacham.
As a part of the Better Living Model, the former Conradi Hospital will be developed to provide a mix of social and open market units. And member Doug Moore, you love this one. This project will provide over 3,600 housing opportunities. Its success is a private-public partnership is demonstrated as the City of Cape Town has allocated 223 million and developers have allocated 174 million to the project. The Western Cape Department of Human Settlements has over the next 3 years committed 160 million to the title deeds. This is the land reform. Listen, Member Dijana, during the 2018-19 financial year, 7,000 new title deeds will be provided.
Order. Just finish your sentence. Your time has expired.
Okay, thank you very much. In conclusion, it is quite clear that this DA-led Western Cape government's budget is for the people as it redresses the past injustices while creating public value.
Thank you, Member. Your time has expired.
Deputy Speaker.
Order. I see Minister Grant, Minister of Transport.
Hello, Trudy.
Order.
Deputy Speaker, leaders of opposition parties, honourable members. It is my pleasure to participate in this important debate about the 2018 Western Cape budget, a budget which in the foreword to the budget review by my colleague, Minister Meyer, is described as being responsive to the key priorities of the province and one in which emphasis is placed on creating public value for the people of the province. Deputy Speaker, I have referred to this description of this budget for good reason. We need to remind ourselves that the formulation, tabling, and adoption of a state budget is about much more than a listing of amounts of money. It is also a public commitment that the money voted will in fact be available and spent on that for which its allocation has been approved. In this regard, Jacob Lew, the 76th US Secretary of the Treasury, is on record as saying, "The budget is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and aspirations." So, Deputy Speaker, any government at any level which adopts a budget is, by implication, making a series of commitments, including having the legislation, policies, structures, and human resources in place to deliver on these commitments by spending the money transparently on the purposes for which it was voted. This is always challenging. It is particularly challenging when a government, such as is the case nationally in South Africa, chooses to place huge amounts of public funds under the control of various arm's-length entities responsible for services which are significant drivers of economic development. Badly handled, this situation slides quickly into nothing more than an illusion of accountability and an illusion of the ability to deliver on budget objectives. One of the sad truths about South African public life and the life of too many South African public institutions in recent years, and I include particularly the destructive period during which Jacob Zuma headed the national government, is the way in which ceremonial illusion replaced substance. Too often the essential building blocks of our constitutional democracy became mere theatrical performances devoid of all responsibility to build a cohesive nation based on our agreed and codified values, devoid of their responsibility to service the needs of a population still crippled by poverty and income inequality, and in order to afford to turn these responsibilities into realities, their obligation to take the nation forward economically. Examples are many and varied, but let us start at the top of the institutions. Parliament defined as including both the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. In recent years, we have witnessed behavior more aligned with barroom brawls than the elevated actions envisaged in Section 42 of the Constitution. The ceremonial trappings largely survived and continued. The important work did not. In the end, Parliament was unable to do what it is enjoined to do in Section 42, to scrutinize and oversee executive action. The then President made a mockery of this crucial constitutional requirement. Even when he was finally removed, the country had to enjoy the travesty of having a critical budget tabled by a minister who was clearly not going to be responsible for delivering on the objectives and commitments of the budget he was required to address.
Honourable Dugmore, you've made your point. Please continue, Minister.
A host of state-owned enterprises suffered from the same shortcomings. Boards were appointed, dismissed, reorganized, and appointed again. Chief executive officers and chief finance officers came and went, often at huge expense to the public purse, and in one spectacular case, to a pension fund. Acting appointments became the order of the day. And so, Speaker, in many of our state-owned enterprises, as with Parliament, the trappings remained, but the work was simply not done. There was little or no corporate governance. There was equally little or no effort to take the enterprise forward, whether it was energy production, rail transport, or the national air carrier. The irony of this happening in the land of various excellent King reports is surely not lost on the members of this House. But, Deputy Speaker, what the SOEs lacked in corporate governance and the responsible ministers lacked in either concern or any sense of oversight responsibility, there was certainly no shortage of public money for the dubious contracts and convoluted supply chain management practices. If this type of activity were an Olympic sport, we would have been record breakers and could have displayed cabinets full of gold medals. Hopefully the medals would have been the originals. Is it any wonder, Deputy Speaker, against the brief background that I have sketched, that President Ramaphosa's SONA and his first session of responding to questions were praised? The actions related to the Eskom board and Eskom management have also given hope to a battered and bruised country, our significantly damaged economy, and a disillusioned world. What a breath of fresh air was provided by the Chief Justice in his mature, dignified, yet humorous handling of his responsibilities during the change of political leadership. It is often said of South Africans that we have 10-minute historical memory about too many critical events. Too much dubious leadership in public life, private enterprise, and broad society encourage us to set the bar disturbingly low when we endorse, as potential holders of office, people whose track record cannot survive the full light of day. It is painfully true, Deputy Speaker, that sunlight remains the best disinfectant. In this regard, a budget once tabled and adopted should serve as a checklist whereby we hold governments, SOEs and other institutions to account. An obvious mechanism through which this is done is through the formal state audit process. The ongoing positive performance of the Western Cape government, as reported by the Auditor General, and the merit awards received by various departments within the Western Cape government are testimony to the fact that the budget we are addressing today is carefully compiled and a firm commitment to delivering to the poor people of this province. My congratulations to Minister Meyer and his staff, as well as the staff of Provincial Treasury. I thank you.
Honourable Dennis Joseph.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the Budget Committee, and in particular as Chairperson of the Budget Committee, I support the budget estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure as tabled in this House 6 March by our Minister of Finance, Dr. Meyer. Dis 'n DA-begroting vir al die mense. Dis 'n oop proses vir die publiek wat in die koerante geadverteer was. Deputy Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Budget Council, our Premier, our Cabinet Ministers, our CFOs and HODs, and all their staff in all the departments, including Provincial Treasury staff, all the leaders in the municipalities who gave leadership and assistance over the months following our Ministers of Finance allowed him to table the budget. Deputy Speaker, let me give a word of thanks to all the members of the Budget Committee representing their respective political parties, as well as the staff in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Why was the National Minister of Finance fired after he delivered his budget speech? It was a vote of no confidence in the minister. This Western Cape government is the most stable government in the last 9 years. Deputy Speaker, gister was ook Menseregte Dag in Suid-Afrika. Ons vier hierdie dag sedert 21 Maart 1995 en is gebaseer op die Sharpeville Dag 21 Maart 1960 toe 69 mense doodgeskiet is en 180 gewond is terwyl hulle teen die paswette betoog het. Die Departement van Kultuur en Sport het 'n begroting wat museums insluit, 'n begroting van 760 miljoen rand. In ons eie land gaan menseregte geskiedenis so ver terug soos die Khoi en die San wat se lewenswyse en kultuur uitgewis is, gevegte het onder verskillende volkere ontstaan, as ook gevegte onder Afrikaners en Engelse wat tot groot konsentrasiekampe gelei het waar vroue en kinders se regte erg geskend was. Deputy Speaker, ons onlangse geskiedenis veral na 1948 toe apartheidswetgewing ons land se mense op grond van kleur en groepsgebiede verdeel het die bruin mense, die swart mense, die wit mense, die Indiër mense wat hulle grond verloor het, dit verloor vir 'n minderheidsgroep. Deputy Speaker, hierdie misdaad teen die mensdom mag nooit weer gebeur nie. In die DA glo ons in regverdigheid, gelykheid, as ook die vryheid van assosiasie en geleenthede vir almal. Deputy Speaker, let me recognize the role of the media in all its forms. Through their investigative work, they have produced many stories to civil society. Under difficult circumstances, the media is driving free and a transparent press. Deputy Speaker, it is disappointing to note that in yesterday's burger on Human Rights Day, the burger did not reflect Human Rights Day as important, given their front page did not cover human rights as a national day, with a small story on page 4. Anders as die ANC en die EFF laat die DA toe, selfs in die geval van Patricia de Lille teen die Federale Raad, dat die media onversteurd hulle werk doen. Stories that the media reported on, like Nkandla, the Marikana tragedy, Sasa scandal, Life Esidimendi, and state capture bring South Africans to one question: Why is some of the ministers still serving in the cabinet of Minister Ramaphosa? Many of these stories borders on denying people their human rights, costing the taxpayers billions of rands. The ANC just simply ignored the media and questions raised by the DA and other opposition parties. Deputy Speaker, the ANC het Jacob Zuma en die ANC se belange bo die land se belange gestel en in sekere gevalle ook bo die konstitusie. The ANC is the ruling party in South Africa must first acknowledge their failure to deliver on government mandate in addressing land restitution according to the Constitution, Section 25. The DA support land transformation in a responsible manner. The ANC and the EF want to change the Constitution, taking land without compensation. Firstly, if this becomes a reality, it will be no different when land under apartheid was taken away from people without compensation. Secondly, the land that the ANC and the EF wants does not even belong to them in the first place. Historically, the land belongs, according to the United Declarations, the land belongs to the indigenous people, and they are willing to share this land with all South Africans. So the best investment we can make is to allow title deeds to all people, including the land on the communal land. Deputy Speaker, the budget for the 2018-19 is once again directed to deal with the previously disadvantaged and the poor. The budget is also ensuring that service delivery to all citizens in the Western Cape will continue. Deputy Speaker, it is only right that we thank those who faithfully pay their taxes to SARS and all the people who participate in the economy directly or indirectly. The Western Cape government, with a staff of plus minus 80,000, with their extended families, as well as the private sector, play a significant role in the economy, together with government who supports the pensioners, the SASSA beneficiaries, and the non-governmental organizations. They all play an equal part. Speaker, the total expenditure, Deputy Speaker, the total expenditure of 62 billion for the 2018-19 financial year for the Western Cape will be used in all departments and all entities to stimulate an inclusive economy despite the experience currently of a flat economic growth rate due to water crisis and the drought in the Western Cape. The continued reduction of water demand will avoid day zero. Saving water is very important, and this will avoid an uncomfortable lifestyle for all citizens, including our visitors.
Your time has expired. If you just want to finish with the last sentence.
Deputy Speaker, in closing, I would like to say that the ANC knows very well that the people rejects them. The people in this province knows that under DA government they are in good hands, and the future of the SA, the hope of SA, is in the hands of the DA.
Thank you, Member. Your time has expired. The Honourable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Deputy Speaker, this budget takes place a day after our country's Human Rights Day. That serves as a reflection we have travelled together in South Africa to rid ourselves of the ugly past of segregation, exclusion and degradation caused by the apartheid-structured socio-economic political order. It is in this context one is intrigued by the statement of the Minister's budget, the budget for the people, and ask who are the people he refers to. In addressing the disparities, SA had to infuse in its system a huge number of the majority that were deliberately excluded from the economy. And as such, that reflects the project of South African democracy, that is inclusion. In its diversity, SA people remain a diverse group, diverse in their social standing, their political and economic standing. As such, Minister, who is the people you dedicate this budget to? And I want to address once again this issue that it seems here in this House, Honourable Deputy Speaker, there is an issue about race. Race, like gender and other, remains measures of vulnerability to measure changes in society. It is also acknowledged as an assessment tool to realize and measure equality. So I'm very worried when the colleagues on the other side seek to silence everybody when they try to use one of these measures, which is race and gender and others, to understand the decisions made by this particular government. Only if we believe as this government and in this province under the DA leadership that socio-economic rights are human rights which represent and must confer justice, equality, transformation for the betterment of all across social and economic standing. If so, how do we measure and understand the message of this budget to mirror what the DA chooses to do or not do for the people of the Western Cape? We thus believe that if a budget is to be for the people, the guidelines provided by some of the institutes, in particular the studies in poverty and inequality, which reflects three elements of focus: the revenue collection, the allocation, and spending in budgets, is what we must consider. This budget informs us of available revenue of 63.6 billion rands that is at the disposal of this government against the mirrored and competing interest of the citizens of the Western Cape, with about 93% thereof as transfers from the national as both equitable share and conditional grants. We must appreciate through this the concept of our constitutional democracy and adherence of our national government to budget allocation to enable provinces to function and deliver services. That remains the role of the national government. Whilst we celebrate the economic growth of the Western Cape, we must hasten the reality presented by drought to continue this positive yield and growth trade. Economists have told us of the possible risk exposure of the South African economy to harsh drought conditions as it presents serious water shortages for agricultural activities and production. Western Cape accounts for 20% of the country's total agricultural labor force, and as the rating agencies such as the Moody recently raised concerns of possible job losses in the agriculture that, as they correctly emphasize, will result in the loss of tax income. These are serious considerations that, as this Parliament and the whole of government, must be preoccupied with. We cannot continue to largely deposit a rosy narrative of a Western Cape economy on an upward spiral where all is cozy, without also appreciating the warning signals of our current provincial realities. Such must be questioned against agility to respond to today's drought conditions that were raised in the USSD conference here on the shores of South Africa in September 2002 and concluded as part of Agenda 21. Are we only waking up to this reality only now? If so, how are we to be measured? Are we a responsible government for the people, a government who failed to plan and plan to fail? It is from this world dialogue that citizens of the world and government were already alive to this reality. As such, in the State of Environment report of 2004, it identified the province, especially the Western Cape, increasingly having rapid pressure on already stressed Western Cape's water resources. The challenge, it further states that the challenge for the province's water managers is extremely daunting. Not only do they have to supply water to a huge and rapidly growing population, but they must also design reservoirs or utilize other, that is, groundwater resources to contend with droughts of unpredictable magnitude at unpredictable times. Interestingly, in 2017, we find ourselves battling here about support to the PHA to preserve that land as such, to protect the aquifer against a DA-led provincial government through its Minister of Local Government, who is also Minister of Environment and Planning, working with the DA-led City of Cape Town, and their decisions to enable high-end property development on this land that underneath sits a critical underwater resource. On the other hand, Minister of Economic Development and also Minister of Economic Development and Tourism and also a Minister of Agriculture was caught between the rock and the hard place to make arguments or succumb to pressure over preserving this critical resource of national importance that already was identified in the 2004 State of the Environment report, that the groundwater resources of the Western Cape province are generally underutilized. Today is the International Water Day, as declared by the UN General Assembly in March 1993, and the Western Cape economy and the City of Cape Town in particular remains a serious risk to the security of water supply. We ask, what happened to the DA Day Zero? Anyway, where is the Mayor, Patricia de Lille? There is a leadership tussle whilst we are grappling with this reality. We are told through the Moody's Investor Services that the water crisis poses a credit risk to Cape Town's debt rating, which is currently at the lowest level of investment grade, Baa3, which is the lowest investment grade, and as such, added that the city was on review for a downgrade. Why are these not elevated into serious economic risks of this economy? Are we led by a responsible government in this province? Are these being swept under the carpet? We must welcome the President of the ANC and the State President, Cyril Ramaphosa, on his announcement in the SONA to heighten efforts of dealing with the impact of drought by elevating drought as a national state of disaster, mentioning the 3 provinces, including the Western Cape. Drought remains a huge challenge, and we join all efforts to save the current water resources and call for speedy implementation of water saving and augmentation initiatives. This government must visit and share notes with its counterparts in KZN, where in December 2014, the KZN provincial government declared drought in the province. In May 2017, the Richards Bay desalination plant was launched and has improved water security and reliability for that province, and especially local communities that have access through their water schemes. Section 24 states of the Constitution that everyone has a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being, and further have the environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations through reasonable legislative and other measures. And as such, we support the case lodged by our ANC Youth League activist, Advocate Winston Erasmus, against this DA government to answer on the delay in establishing the Environment Commission.
Order. Member, your time has expired. Finish your last sentence, please.
The features of a robust drive for inclusive growth in this province remains to be seen. This is an all-known fact that the markets can't provide everything.
Your time has now expired.
Thank you.
I see Minister Meyer to respond.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you for honourable members for taking part in this debate. I have listened carefully, and thank you for acknowledging that this is a budget for the people. Honourable Member Mumbombo is correct. We need also the application of fairness in the fiscal framework. Honourable members, this budget also makes provision for 25 billion rand over the next 3 years, specifically to deal with the issues of infrastructure, since this cabinet has adopted an infrastructure-led growth strategy. But also more important, Honourable Deputy Speaker and members of this House, and I am particularly happy that through the work of the various ministers, but also the minister responsible for infrastructure, both the Minister of Human Settlements, the Minister of Education, the Minister of Health, and specifically also the Minister of Social Development, we will now focus more heavily on maintenance and repairs, and 5.2 billion rand has been set aside for repairs and maintenance. In this province, we have prioritized repairs and maintenance. And so I want to thank Honourable Member McKenzie for also speaking about in support for infrastructure-led growth strategy. Minister Fritz is correct. This is a budget for the poor because this is a government that is caring for people. This was not, Honourable Members, an easy budget. We had long hours with the Treasury and with the Premier and with the Budget Committee thinking about how we to put this budget together, because firstly, you had a budget cut of 1.4 billion nationally, implications for all the provinces, a 1.6 billion rand cut nationally, and a 1.7 billion budget in the outer year. How does that impact on your budget? We understand that 1.4 billion translates into 144 million rand budget cut, and that's what this budget is for this year, 166 million for next year, and 177 million rand for the outer year. Those were the budget cuts in respect of the provincial equitable share. But Honourable Deputy Speaker, members of this House must know, and it will affect all of you, since all of us are also members of various constituencies. For this year, there is a 3.4 billion rand cut in the conditional grants that will impact severely on your members that you represent in this House in the context of infrastructure grants. And it is sad that because, and Honourable members are correct, Honourable Member Schaefer and McKenzie is correct, that this Zuma added tax is now coming at a price. And that price is a 3.4 billion rand cut nationally through the conditional grants, 1.4 billion rand for this year on the equitable share. It will certainly hit the poor. But what we have done in this particular budget, Honourable Deputy Speaker, is to protect the vulnerable people, to protect the poor. Specifically, if you look at the budget, and most of you have been there, in fact all of you, were there when we tabled the budget of 22 billion rand for education, 23 billion rand for health, and also 2.2 billion rand for social development. What we were able to do was to protect those particular budgets through the provincial equitable share, where this cabinet has resolved there shall be no cuts in the provincial equitable share in respect of those three departments. Precisely, Dennis, I think the burger understand the topic, the budget for the poor, 'n begroting vir die armes, juis omdat ons beskerming gebied het binne daardie breë benadering. So, but what is more tragic, Honourable Deputy Speaker? What is clear? What is clear? We had a 48 billion rand under collection in tax. How did that happen? Here is the answer, Premier. The answer is very clear. There has been a complete mismanagement at the South African Revenue Services. The South African Revenue Services is the supreme tax collecting authority. But what do they do? The core business of the tax office is to collect tax. What are they doing with their core responsibility? Listen, Honourable Member Duckmore, 48 billion rand tax under collection. The core business of a tax office is tax collection. If you outsource your core business, you have no more mandate and control over it. And that is what has happened. They've outsourced their core function to 8. This is the National Democratic Revolution that want to insource everything, but they outsource tax collection. This is absolute madness. 48 billion rand outsourced because they couldn't collect tax, 8 agencies. But this is the real story. What they have done, they've appointed a new integrated credit solutions. This is what they have done. When you outsource your core business, you are moving into the space of complacency. But one of the members, the staff members of SARS, that work in SARS, that must collect domestic resource mobilization, what is he doing? He first organized a new integrated credit solutions, one of his companies. What does this company do? They pay 600,000 rand into his bank account. One of the service providers of SARS that is outsourced, he received 600,000 rand in his bank account. This is what you are doing. His name is Jonas Makwakwa. He eventually had to quit, but this is the situation. So when we face this budget cuts of 48 billion rand, it is a result of the mismanagement of the tax office, and we are glad. But we are more happy in the collapse of the economy because there's deeper things happening. But also, when people mismanage the tax office, people automatically do not want to further pay tax. And so, honourable members, this is definitely something to really worry about. Honourable members, I think this is a tragedy. We have really, but there's good news. In every crisis, temporary good news for now. Honourable member of the Commission of SARS, I'm very happy that he has been suspended. He is absolutely no good. Honourable Minister Grant mentioned that a budget is a reflection of your values. And what are the values of this government? This budget gives effect to competence, caring, accountability, integrity, innovation, and this budget is definitely in the space of responsiveness. Honourable members, I think your values will now come in the next few lines. Honourable members, I'm glad to see on the order paper today in this House a notice of motion that the House debates the land expropriation without compensation in the name of Honourable Member Schaefer. Honourable members must all deeply think about this debate as the EFF and ANC is they are now smelling losing the election in 2019. That's what is happening. Because when you lose an election, you make popular statements. And this land grab is nothing but try to steal the election through the back door. We, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I know you've got farms.
Order.
Because you got some farms through land reform, and I'm looking after your farm now, specifically in Drakenstein. So the EFF is coming for your farm, Honourable Member. We, Honourable Deputy Speaker, on a more serious note, we are prepared for this debate. We will not allow the ANC and the EFF to ruin this beautiful country. We will not allow you to turn South Africa into a Zimbabwe. Honourable Member Olivier, we will not allow you and your EFF absent colleague to turn this country into a Zimbabwe. Because we believe...
Order.
Honourable Member Olivier, Minister Fritz, help us please. Honourable Member Olivier, we believe in a constitutional democracy. We will debate it, and we are looking forward for that debate. We're going to put this gallery full of people. We will put them to sea, because we want that debate. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'd also like to thank all the members and the ministers for their various input. I'd also like to agree, Honourable Deputy Speaker, during this debate, Honourable Member, the Chair of the Budget Committee, Dennis Davis, Joseph, he's amper a judge. Sorry that I almost declared you a judge. Honourable Dennis Joseph, the Chair of the Budget Committee, said that this is the best run government in South Africa. And Honourable Member Olivier said, no, there's a correction. This is the best run government in the whole world. I put it for the record of answer. Honourable Member Olivier must note that we are not sleeping like in the National Assembly. So when you speak, it goes to the record. It is now on the record that this is the best government in the whole world. That's your version. It is on the record of this Parliament. Also, Honourable Member Olivier, right in front of you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, right in front of all of us is also the minutes of the Budget Committee. I've read the minutes, and the minute says the Budget Committee has adopted and approved this budget. I want to thank you for that support from the Budget Committee. I want to thank the Premier. I want to thank the Leader of Government Business, the members of the Cabinet. I want to thank Zak Hussein, the head of the Provincial Treasury, the Director General, the Advocate Gerber, the whole team in the Provincial Budget Office, and Jolinda Cantana, the Chief Director, Provincial Governance. Thank you for the work that you are doing in that Budget Office. I want to thank all the accounting officers of the various departments, but also the accounting officers of the various public entities. And for the record, Honourable Member Olivier, 100% of all the public entities in Konto got a clean audit. Unlike in the National Parliament, where Eskom took 350 billion rand out of a 500 billion rand state guarantees. That madness must stop. And I yesterday met with Minister Andan Kloplo, and I mentioned to her that Eskom refused to give their staff budget to the Treasury. Where in the world have you seen something like this? We are now going to ask the staff and compensation budget of Eskom. For now, they refuse, but we're going to subpoena them because we want to see what is happening there. In this government, all the public entities, when we practice fiscal consolidation, when we issue budget circulars to the various accounting officers and to the various ministers, we also issue that budget circular to all the public entities. because they are in part of the budget fiscal space. Unlike in the National Assembly, you have a budget and ESCOM is on another planet. We will bring them back to planet Earth where we belong in terms of our budget. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I thank everybody for this work, and I want to thank the Budget Office. They have put an outstanding budget, and if there's any applause, it must be for the Budget Office. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate on the consideration of the principle of the bill. Are there any objections to the bill, to the principle? No objections. Agreed to. Secretary will read the bill.
Western Cape Appropriation Bill.
From tomorrow onwards, we will debate the individual votes as per the estimates of expenditure, the Blue Book, and the debate will be more confined to the individual portfolios and votes. That brings us to the end of the business for the day. The House is adjourned.